Back, by the way, folks. This is the Country Telegraph on the World today. Before we get into our first guest for the hour, just got to just talk quickly about the farmers are digging in deep, you might say, in the UK. Rachel Reeves, well, as one farmer says, she's got it horribly wrong.
Hi Rachel, my name is Ben Aveling and I am a farmer from Northamptonshire. This farm behind me has been in my family for generations. Changes you have made to farming inheritance tax could completely change this. What you have implemented is going to completely stop that. But what does that mean? Farmers like me working every day to put food on British people's plates who work hard for their food also affects the future of my family, my children and their children. This isn't about wealthy landowners. It's about working farms providing food for working people. We do it for little or no profit, work incredibly long hours, and we don't mind it. We just want to know that we're going to have our farm when we put in that graft. Rachel, you have the opportunity to save British farming, undo this mess with one flick of a pen. Because if you don't, you're going to price the next generation out of existence and you're going to make it so we cannot produce food in this country and we'll have zero food security for the nation. And that is not a future anybody wants. Thank you, Rachel, for listening.
Okay, there's a farmer making a very good point too. We don't want, in fact, need less government interference in farming. It's tough enough as it is. Chris Lahy is an ex-dairy farmer and a farmer's advocate. Lives at Lake Boga in the heart of the Murray-Darling Basin. He was a dairy farmer and has long been politically active in supporting Australian farmers. He was the Citizens Party's federal candidate for Mallee. And Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be back again.
Yeah, it looks a beautiful day where you're at the moment in Lake Boga.
It is absolutely. Well, if we ain't going to have any rain, it's like this. It's a very nice day. I'm in my front yard, as a matter of fact, at the moment, so it's very, very, very nice.
Very pleasant. Can hear the sausages sizzling in the background. Maybe not.
Well, as a matter of fact, they are. I've got two of my youngest sons are turning 23 today. They're twins, so yeah, we've got a bit of a party planned.
Fantastic. Of course, you'll be watching your eating and no drinking, I would imagine.
That's right. I have to behave myself now. Now I've been told I got to grow up.
I think you can show your sons a thing or two, but anyway, that's just between you and I and many others that are watching at the moment. Tell me this, Chris, how regulated is the Australian farmer sector or the farm sector at the moment in general? And has this changed in recent years as industries like the dairy industry, has that changed or has it reformed? And so the regulation, is it knee deep, waist deep, head high deep in red tape?
In terms of meeting product or production criteria or quality, we're sort of up to our heads in regulation and red tape, if you have termed the use, and that's just so farmers can get their product to market, get their product onto the supermarket shelves, and we have some of the tightest regulations globally. And because of that, and this is the good side about that, we're able to produce some of the finest and highest quality food on the planet. But it's coming at a cost where farmers are finding it very hard to meet those regulations and trying it very hard to just tread the water and beat the market power players like the supermarkets who apply their own sort of regulation onto their as another layer for them to cope with. So yes, Mike, we are. I guess we're varying depths of muck in regulation.
Mm. Would you say then that the dairy sector in Victoria is over-regulated?
I think what we have to look at is regulation to produce high quality product, and it is. I think that's an important part of the regulation. The other sorts of regulation is market regulation, and I think that market regulation is over the top. I'm not sure where is where we want to go with this in terms of supermarket dominance, but those sorts of regulations are what farmers are being uh, uh, subject to, and they are not been able to cope with that, I guess. And we've seen that. We've seen here in recent months and this year, we've seen farmers taking their displeasure, their disgust to the streets and driving their tractors through rural towns, blockading and boycotting and protesting at government functions and things like that to sort of raise awareness of what's actually going on.
Look, the VFF have apparently recently argued against the replacement of a new Food Safe Victoria organisation with the United Dairy Farmers of Victoria. There's the president asking for clarification. Can you give us some clarification on why he wants more clarification?
Well, I think that's a pretty good question he's asking, because from my understanding at this present point in time, with this new or the reform they're bringing forward, it's very, very opaque. Whereas the regulations up to this point, I guess the farmers understand it, and they're able to perform and produce to those standards. So I think it's a fair point to ask for clarification on what is seemingly not a very a transparent process. And I would wonder whether if the major supermarket players have had a little bit of a hand in this as part of their overreach into farm gate pricing and stuff like that. Now that might seem a little sceptical or even conspired, but you've got to ask the question: why are we not seeing the writing on the paper, and this is why the BDF are asking for clarification. So I think they're protecting their producers.
Why do you think this is happening? What's your feelings? What's your gut feelings?
Well, from those, for those who I've talked to about this, some are confused. Some are saying, "Why fix what isn't broken?" My feeling is it's just another way to get a tighter control on food productivity and food security. And it's just going to squeeze more and more farmers out of food production. That's my feeling, because I've seen this pattern happen over and over again. Whether it's water reform, whether it's regulation on food production, and the dairy industry has been subject to that constantly. So that's my feeling on that, Mike.
The Vic dairy industry, is it in good nick?
We're seeing now, much like in New South Wales, and I speak about both because I live in a border region, and there's quite a discrepancy between the two states. And New South Wales went through their trials, and us are still, and now we're seeing in Victoria a similar pattern where dairy farmers and family farms simply can't cope with the pricing, can't cope with the regulation. On top of that, you've got your seasonal impacts, and they are just exiting the industry. And we're already now, Mike, as a nation, have a shortfall of supply of fresh milk to our daily market. So this is only going to get worse. And I'm wondering when the processors are going to wake up to themselves and start paying the farmers more.
What about tell us about the raw milk and raw cheese markets? I mean, it seems to be I mean, it never has gone away, but I mean, the thought of having raw milk isn't my idea of a cup of tea, although people swear by it. So what are the markets like for that? Is it growing?
It's a market in demand, and it's a niche market, Mike. And what you probably have to understand, and what your viewers and listeners have to understand, is that it's also subject to health regulations, both nationally and state-based regulations, and they've got to meet a certain criteria. So let's look at unpasteurized milk. Well, that as a whole food product is a very, very valuable nutritional product that has a lot of health benefits. Now, The problem with unpasteurised milk is it doesn't meet health criteria for human consumption. So that's a very scientific discussion. But long story short, is markers in milk, that is amino acids and certain pathogens and certain other bacteria, because there's bacteria in everything. Uh, Milk is pasteurized by heat, and when you apply heat to it, you destroy a lot of what the milk actually is and turn it into something else. Still nutritious, but it's different. So
Tell me, I was just curious about that. Why did we then go? Why did we initially go down the path of pasteurizing milk? I mean, if it's so good for you, why would we want to destroy the goodness?
Well, pasteurisation, in a positive sense, gives milk greater shelf life. So typically, if you have let's say you have a litre of unpasteurised milk, its shelf life is quite short because it hasn't had all those things that tend to make milk spoil and removed from them. Plus, when you also with the pasteurisation process comes homogenisation. So when you homogenized milk, you have to take and redistribute fat in very, very small parcels throughout all the milk. Whereas when you have unpasteurized milk, that milk actually separates. You get cream, and for many, many, many years, cream was skimmed off the top and sold at market, unpasteurized product made into butter. So I think for the general consumer, when pasteurized milk is sold, the expectation that it will last for weeks on the shelf or in the fridge, whereas unpasteurised milk tends to have a shorter shelf life. Now, I'm not saying that unpasteurised milk is less valuable for those people, and I've personally spoken to children or families of children who have health issues, and they have been recommended. And I'm not saying do this, but they say if you have a relationship with a dairy farmer, go and drink some unpasteurised milk because the goodness and the things in unpasteurised milk is not present uh, in its entirety in pasteurised milk. So
Yeah,
there is an argument for both.
when I was very young, I had to have goat's milk. They recommended to the doctor as he came into our property on his horse. No, not that old, but they said goat's milk. Goat's milk is very good for you. Have you heard that? Have you heard that goat's milk?
Correct. Yes, goat's milk, a very different product than cow's milk or milk from bovines. Uh, they're different quality altogether. Makes great cheese. It makes a great curd, and it's no doubt because many civilizations since the dawn of time have drank goat's milk or ate goat's milk products. So, yes, I'm a fan of goat's milk cheese. I love it actually on my cheese platters. So, absolutely.
But you'd like any sort of cheese, wouldn't you?
Well, I do. I'm a great fan of all sorts of cheeses. Correct. And my mum actually was a cheesemaker, a master cheesemaker. So we made milk from our own dairy products. So we made, bocconcini, or which is mozzarella. We made cottage cheese. We made some soft cheeses. So yeah, I'm a big fan, and I know that cottage farming or small scale farming, you can do these sorts of things. Actually, where I live at Lake Boga, we have a local dairy, which actually there are their own processes, and they make a range of yogurt and cheese products along with flavoured milk. So that's Bethune Lane Dairies, and that's just nearby. That's here in Lake Boga. So we're very proud of that. That our local processor, a dairy farmer processor, is doing this.
I mean, in the bush, we used to call our parents the old cheese. Remember? The old cheese made the old cheese, and that's
Well, I still do that, but I get a punch in the arm also.
well, you deserve it. That's just another story that I'll spread around.
Yes.
What's the actual definition of raw milk?
Raw milk is milk that hasn't been heat treated. And which is a typical process here in Australia. European countries who dairy farm and process milk, and they many of them have a different pasteurisation processes, which involves the use of a product that we know here in Australia called AquaShield, which has colloidal silver and a very low percentage of hydrogen peroxide, and that enables the destruction of pathogens and not destroying the quality and the of the milk. That is, doesn't destroy amino acids, doesn't destroy proteins, doesn't destroy some of the beneficial bacteria that we need for curd, making culture or making yogurt, for example. So that's the definition of raw milk: milk that has not been heat treated.
Tell me this: the raw cheeses, are they? Because you mentioned raw milk's very good for you. Same would apply, I would imagine, to raw cheeses.
Well, raw cheeses is a bit of a broad term. A lot of cheese making requires heat
Mm.
to or some sort of temperature to get occurred. So your soft cheeses typically can be classed as a raw cheese. So your things like your soft bries and soft camemberts, uh, your cottage cheeses, you could consider those a raw cheese.
Okay, we've talked about cheeses and milks and all that.
You're making me hungry, Mike.
I know. I can smell your snaggers in the background. So we're very country oriented here. I can say snaggers, the old cheese,
Yep.
all sorts of things that we would say in the bush and which have been handed down through generation to generation. And we treat those sayings with with great respect. This is why you
Yep.
normally follow that up with a beer or three. Can you just tell me what are the issues before we wind this up? Because I know you've
Sure.
got the barber to look after, you've got your sons to look after, and you got to tell them make up some stories about how great you are. Can you just tell me other issues at the moment that you see that are rising or bubbling just under the surface that's affecting farmers throughout Victoria?
Well, that's a really good question, Mike. And I know it doesn't so much involve food quality like we've just been discussing. What
Mm,
I'm seeing is farmers have been beaten about the head and shoulders by supermarket pricing, and I have friends, uh, close friends, and colleagues who are all food producers. They're dairy farmers, they're vegetable growers, they are fruit growers, and they're all saying the same thing. They cannot get their product, or they cannot get the farm gate price to cover the cost of production. So just nearby where I live here in Lake Boga, I've got some friends were zucchini growers, and they've simply stopped doing it because they cannot produce a kilo of zucchinis for the price the supermarkets pay for. In fact, they get paid so far under the last crop they had. They ran a mulcher over it and said it's not worth it. And we're seeing the similar thing with horticulture, with nectarines and summer fruits like
mm,
peaches, and a similar thing. They can't get the right price to cover even a break even situation. Vegetable growers around the west of Swan Hill, around Beverford, all have the same woe. Either they go very big and diversify, or they just simply stop doing it. And that is a very alarming to hear that from farmers saying,
mm,
well, if we stop growing food, what are we going to eat and where's it going to come
mm.
from, Mike? And that then opens up the question: if we get food from China and from other places, what the quality of that food is, Mike, I kid you not, would make your hair stand on end.
So what happens? I mean, a business can't afford to do that, especially if you're on the land, because you just can't pull out one crop and put another one in, and next day you're back into it. Uh,
No,
but so this itself would be, beside, and it's always been part of the operation of a farm is to make sure you get a decent price for your goodies.
correct.
But if you don't, I mean, common sense would say that if you don't get that decent price, you're not going to be around all that long. How can we fix it?
Well, it is an easy fix. We just need governments to make policy that is brave and fight the predominant powers, that is, let's call it the supermarket monopolies, and set price parity. Make it so, and make it legislate it so farmers, at the minimum, get paid for what it costs to produce it. And I'm sure if we got that across the line with government policy, I think farmers would feel very uh, happy with that, because when you make that as a base or a benchmark, then there's always room to move forward. But at the moment, when your back's against the wall, and I know it's a bit of a hackneyed term, um, and the only choice you get is either get out if you've got something to fight for, that is a minimum or a benchmark. That is, a farmer gets paid 25 cents a litre at the farm gate. A zucchini producer gets paid the $6 or $7 a kilo farm gate price. Now, if that is set, and we set price parity for production, I think we're going to be a lot better off. But we need a government to be courageous and stop pussyfooting around these monopolies and dictate to them. Say this is how it's going to be. Enough is enough.
Good luck on the government with gonads. I don't think they
Yes.
exist. Okay, the all important. I mean, we've gone through the entire dairy sector briefly, of course.
Sure.
Touched government and stuff. The world needs to know what else you're having besides snaggers tonight.
Well, we're actually going over, once we have a bit of an afternoon feed. We're going over to our local pub because that's at the commercial hotel in Lake Boga, and apparently the chef has been working hard at securing produce from locally made. So we're going to just try it out and see what's up on the menu. So that's what the rest of the night's. We may even have a couple of coldies.
Who's driving? The wife? Yeah.
I probably will. I'll behave myself, Mike.
What a good dad you are. If somebody wants to find out more about you, about questions about on the land or fatherhood, how do they do that?
Yeah, sure. Look, Mike, it's no secret. I am very politically involved. So if you search me out on the Citizens Party website, you'll see me there as a candidate, and you'll get a bit of a bio rundown. And all my contact details are there. My phone number and my email. And I invite anyone who has anything questions to ask, fire away. I'm happy to answer.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Chris, for your time. Appreciate it. Have a great night tonight. You deserve it.
Thanks,
And
Mike.
coming up next here on the Country Telegraph, we have, not only is he doing an enormous amount of good for his community, he's setting the world on fire with his songwriting. That's John Houston. Houston, we have a problem. Next here on the Country Telegraph. John Houston. Houston, are you reading Planet Earth?
Yes, I am.
I saw everything. I mean, truly up your nose hairs. I can see you on the roof with your coat hanger, trying to point north. Next time, get dressed, for God's sake. Look, we only have about 10 minutes, but we can get a lot done in that time. What's the fire season looking like at the moment?
Look, it depends on in the parts of the states you're in, but obviously we're probably getting a little bit more rain than what they are in other parts. We're down along the coast on the west side, but yeah, it's pretty dire in a lot of other places. And the worst part about it is if they don't get rain, it's going to dry out pretty quick and be timbery. And we've already had some fires throughout the northern parts of the state already, so it's not looking good.
The long range weather forecast, I mean, for example, on the Gold Coast, we have council, talking about tsunamis. I mean, which are usually caused by earthquakes. And so obviously they have this technology that no one else has in the world. They can predict the earthquake, but it must be about climate change. I mean, that's all it can be, climate change, because we're all going to boil, freeze, die somehow. And it's a terrible thing. It was lovely knowing you as we're about to just die. Not. But tell me about the long range weather forecast. Do they get it right?
No, I think you're probably 75% of the time you just do the opposite of what they say, and it probably works out pretty much right. So, yeah, look, there's lots of different sites and lots of different people doing different things, and I've actually got a friend who's pretty close and gets it pretty accurate on the long range stuff. So, yeah, and we find that generally the meteorology just gets it wrong, and I don't know why they're spending millions and billions of dollars there, and yeah.
What about the government? Because they're right behind climate change, where we boil, freeze, or die somehow. Do they insist, or do you, or even, let's go one step below? does the hierarchy, the ones in charge of CFA and fire and all that sort of stuff throughout Victoria, the Environment Minister and the guy that cleans the toilets, do they actually take note of the long-range weather forecast and say, you must do this?
I think they probably do. I mean, you've got to trust somebody at some point, especially those that are in government. They probably trust their own bureaucratic governments that are working there. So it probably means the farmers and probably those in the real world don't necessarily trust them. I think climate change. Climate changes every day. Like it was 10 degrees cooler yesterday, and it's 10 degrees hotter today. Like I mean, you can shoot a lot of holes in a lot of things if you really analyse it. But I think over time there's cycles in the world, and you go through dry spells, and you go through hot spells, and you go through cold spells and wet spells. So and we don't have a lot of data in Australia to know what those cycles are, because they can be over hundreds of thousands of years basically. So yeah, I mean, we're probably living through that, and I think some people get a little bit scared by it, but I think probably it's not quite as doom and gloom. I believe as what people make out it to be. I think we've just got to adjust as much as we can, but don't panic as much as what they're saying.
I don't think there's a climate crisis at all. Tell me about the burning off situation. It's getting pretty warm, very dry in areas. Are they still burning off?
The coal burns are probably going to stop at some point fairly shortly, I would have thought. You run into the cases if you start burning off and it turns hot, or it doesn't, you can't get them out properly because they can burn under the ground for a while. You create problems somewhere else. So realistically, you want to have your burns off done well before now, as a rule.
Which areas of Victoria are looking the most at risk?
Oh, look, probably if you draw a line across, probably anywhere from above Melbourne, it's probably, if you go straight east west straight across, that's where the areas are drier, and that's probably just because they're further north. But generally along your Gippsland and your southwest down the bottom parts, it's generally not too bad. But look, we only have to go probably 3/4 of an hour north of us, 75 k's north, and they're in a completely different thing. We're probably not looking to go into our fire danger period till probably early December, and if it keeps raining, which there's a bit of prediction it might for where we are along the coast, that might even be later. But as I said, they've had fires up in the Little Desert and stuff like that already, so which is not ideal if they're getting them now.
And when you have these fires that get larger and bigger, they obviously call on you guys to do your bit to help them, and vice versa.
Yes. I mean, that's what we're here for. That's what the volunteers are there for, is to protect the communities and do what we can. But probably morale, as we've talked about before, is at an all-time low at the moment, and it's probably there's got to be a lot of bridge mending and stuff like that to get that morale back up. A lot of them are talking about, not necessarily all the volunteers, a fair percentage. I'm not wanting to go and fight fires in state forests, which, look, it's not ideal, but you can't blame them. They've been totally devastated by the government and things that have gone on, which is out of their control, and that there's people hurting. So and you've got the forest fire management that have got their own issues with. Was it 290 Mercedes G wagons out and 59 Unimogs basically out of action? So now the call is they're going to try and get more CFA to follow that through and help them out where pick up the shortfall. But the volunteers are gutted. So I don't really know what the government's going to do, though. I mean, they've got to mend some bridges, and they've got to mend them pretty quickly. Otherwise, Victoria, really could really struggle. And you can't blame the volunteers. It all falls at the feet of the government at the moment.
With the fire season almost upon us, and if you look at the drought, I mean, obviously it was almost 12 months worth because there was just no rain, and it's very dry. What should people do? Those are living out on even smaller communities that are, I mean, I think of places like Oyun and those places in northwest Victoria. You got smaller areas in your area, but more inland. So they are susceptible to bushfires. What should they do to protect the homes? And if at the end of the day it gets, you can't save your home, you should have an escape plan, shouldn't you? What sort of escape plan should you have?
Yeah, so you really should be looking at predominantly which way your winds come from towards your house, and
Mm,
and then making your escape routes based around that. But probably having a few different plans, because generally your worst days are going to be north winds, but predominantly your winds are probably going to come from the west. So you've got to think that I've got to get out that way. But having those plans in place, but also contingency plans, because if the fire comes from the south, where am I going to go? You just can't just naturally assume that I can go out that road, because the fire might come from a different direction. So a lot of it's planning around your house. You just look. It's just really important, especially up north, or if you're in bushland, is to make sure everything's clear. Your gutters are clear. Keep the grass short if you can. Keep it green. Um, Things like that. Try and get rid of dead wood and stuff that will burn. Uh, Vehicles or whatever. Things like that are combustible.
mm,
Make sure that they're well away or on the opposite side of your place, and then but you can go to your CFA brigades. Look, they will help you, and they'll help you out with a fire ready plan. So feel free to pop into your CFA or contact your
mm,
local captain, and
mm,
they'll help you out. We're more than happy to help you out, and talk through what you can and can't do, and help you with your plans, especially those that are vulnerable, older people or people with young kids,
mm.
or they're out in remote areas. They're probably the ones you really need to
And
be in
what
touch with.
What
And
about it? What about now having people? We all love a barbecue, especially in the nice weather. Can they still have barbecues in all parts of Victoria, or other parts now that you just can't do it?
no, you can. You just got to be clever about it. Like, obviously total fire ban days you can't, but and if you're in a dry area, look, realistically, you've got to say, look, I've got to have a gas barbecue on concrete, or on a nice green lawn that's close to the
Mm,
house. So there's no chance of it getting away. And having a hose and a towel or something that you can beat it down if you have to. But just common sense. Like if it's 45-degree day, you probably don't want to be out lighting the barbecue anyway.
no.
Go to the pub, have a couple of beers, and let them cook your barbie for you, and it's going to be a lot cooler. So I think it's a lot of it's common sense, but unfortunately, sometimes common sense doesn't prevail in some
It
people.
doesn't. Now, if somebody wants to find out more about what they should do and what they shouldn't do, and some of the precautions and some of the warnings, how do they get hold of the CFA?
So you can just ring your locals, your CFA branch, or just go and see them. But you can get online, and there's fire ready apps and things like that you can look up and help you out, and they'll direct you to your local brigade. Look, if you are going to start up something that's a little bit bigger and you're worried about it, you can contact the numbers, and just log what you're doing, or get some groundwork of what you should and shouldn't do. But generally, your best point of call is know your local fire brigade. Obviously, you should know your 000, but you should know your local fire brigade, and especially if you're in remote areas or in bushland. Very
Mm-hmm.
important that you have your local fire brigade number, and have your captain on speed dial. That if you need to contact him for any advice or any help, or if you're worried at all, it should just be a ring them up. They'll be more than happy to help. That's what we're there for,
Mm-hmm.
and we're there to protect our community, and that's part of our job.
Mm. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the question, we've been inundated with radio stations and your legion of fans about when do we expect the next hit song out?
Yes, so it'll be probably about a month. I'm thinking. Thanks, Mike. You're a legend. Um, yeah, probably about a month's time. I've got 3 songs ready to go, but I've just got to make sure that they probably hit the mark at the right point of
Mm,
time. So yeah, there is a nice one coming up, which I think will really satisfy probably more the farming side of it.
mm.
Yeah, so it'll be really good.
Tell me this, instead of the yeehaw music, what about some rock?
Yeah, so you didn't ditch the glitch. I don't know whether you did hear that one. That was a
Yeah,
little
we
bit
played,
rocky.
we've played all
But yeah,
those.
no, I'll take that on board. I'll make sure I get some music that more to your taste.
Yeah, we want like Angels, Akadaka sort of music, and good cabaret stuff, good barbecue music. After
Yes,
the
yes.
fourth or fifth year, great
Yeah, have
barbecue.
a few beers and a sing along and put a snag on the barbie sort of stuff.
Oh, who cares about the barbecue then? Look, John Houston, songwriter extraordinaire and good bloke. Thank you very much for your time.